Hello, Virtue here again. Welcome to another one of my adventures with the dead world in London clips. For those that haven't seen these clips before, this is actually what happened to me. They're real hauntings. It's not a story. Um, Also, generally, I paint a lot of the hauntings I talk about. There's no paintings with this one because they're only minor. But what you're looking at the moment is a very old piece of work of mine. I used to photograph a lot of tombstones about 20 years ago, and this is just I think it's about 1995 this was done, and it's called Veil Bones. And I just thought it's always nice to start off with a painting. Well, I think it is anyway. That's because I'm a painter. If I could put these four hauntings together, I think they're probably a bit of an insight in what it's like to have to be put in embarrassing situations because the dead have either frightened you or done something to you and you've made you react. It's an example of me losing my temper in the middle of a crowded railway station because a dead person was annoying me. Just making a dick of yourself because you've been, contacted or annoyed or something like that. And I guess it's sort of, there's a couple of hints about how I actually got it together and how I actually organised it so it didn't annoy me so much. But anyway, let's move on to the first clip. Charing Cross Hotel. I used to work in an office when I first got to London for the first couple of years, and we used to do a couple of weeks a year working at Charing Cross Hotel. We used to book out all these rooms, and they were turned into like offices type of things. And anyway, I won't go into it because it's a bit boring. But basically, what I did was I worked with junior doctors. So I sort of was this, contact that they'd come in, and I'd be checking sort of qualifications and doing all that sort of thing. And so you could imagine the sort of respectable environment I was in. Sort of had to behave myself, couldn't really play up, had to be polite, etc., etc. I was working there one day, and everything had been fine. I'd been there for about a week in the same sort of, office/room area, and I was actually in conversation with a junior doctor, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I could see clearly, standing in the corner, a very large black, fuzzy, angry entity. Now, I couldn't really even tell at that stage if it was human or non-human, because some of them are just angry. Most of them are male. I don't ever think I've seen a female. I think they're usually always male. Whether or not it was a human version or it was some sort of demonic or inhuman version, I don't really know. But it actually stayed in my vision for quite some time, and it just watched me. Luckily, I happened to be used to this sort of stuff, so I just sort of ignored it because it's all I could do. I was in conversation with the doctor. I can't suddenly get up and scream or run out the room, and they might have me committed. So I just sat there calmly and just ignored it. And this doctor and I got through the things we had to do, and he went off to, do whatever else he had to do. And I was left in the room. There were still quite a few other doctors in there as well, waiting for sort of their turn. And I turned around to the laptop to put the information into it, and just as I did that, I couldn't believe it. This thing suddenly appeared, and it was like 3 inches away from my face. And I was just absolutely shocked because what it had done, it had got really pissed off that I'd ignored it. So it came right up close really quickly to scare the F out of me and to try and make me sort of, shall we say, break character, make me fearful. But I have to admit, about the only thing I did that sort of could indicate that anything had happened. I mean, the doctors wouldn't know what was going on. They couldn't see it. The only thing that I did was I just started typing like an absolute maniac on the laptop so loudly that people were sort of starting to look over as if to say, what the hell is going on over there? But I mean, I did manage to keep it together. But it just shows what they can be like sometimes. If you do ignore them, you sometimes just get into worse trouble because then they take it that step further. But, you know, when you're put in a position like that, there's nothing you can really do. You just have to sort of get on with it and hope like hell that nobody noticed. Anyway, if you do ever stay at Charing Cross Hotel, which is the one next to Charing Cross Underground and Network Station, make sure you don't stay on the 5th floor because it's bloody haunted. So just go any other floor but there. Anyway, we'll go on to the next one. Okay, Shoreditch High Street. Shoreditch High Street was really embarrassing. Really embarrassing. And Shoreditch High Street was one of the haunting that I dealt with down there, was one of the reasons that I invented what I call my dead book, and started getting a lot of these sort of more minor hauntings that were consistently at me a little bit under control. Because, I mean, I think when you sort of get into a position like I did, which is go from having sort of quite an organised, consistent, manageable contacts with the dead in Australia to this chaos that is London and the UK, you just have to build a new system around it, which is kind of what you do with most spiritual stuff. You just ground it, build a system around it so you can make it work in your life. I'll explain the book after this, but I'll tell you what happened. I was walking along Shoreditch High Street on a Saturday morning, and I was slammed by a female dead energy. Now, what I mean by slammed is that quite often if they want my attention for many different reasons, sometimes because they're angry, sometimes because I don't know, sometimes because they're just dicks, they push their energy on in me like that. They push it at me. It's like someone coming up in person and sticking their face right in yours. It's really intrusive. I hate being slammed. I've been slammed a lot in London and I really don't like it at all. So I react in a very angry way. And I think really it's the correct way to act, because you don't want these things trying to push their way in. You know, don't let them in, because they're half the time you don't even know what energy they've got. You've got no idea what type of entity they are. And a good way to get rid of them is to get really angry with them, because most of them will just bounce back out because they don't like it when you get pissed off. My reaction to this was really embarrassing, though, because what happened, it's a natural reaction for me, and I didn't really yell, but I did raise my voice. And all of a sudden I turned to, because she did it on my right, and I turned to the right, and I said at the top of my voice, well, you know, top of my speaking voice, shall we put it, "Fuck off, don't do that to me again. If you do it to me again, you'll be in trouble." And then all of a sudden I stopped and realised where I was, and also realised that I was yelling at a wall, which is really what I don't want to do. Most Londoners wouldn't take any notice. I mean, a few looked at me, but it's just bloody embarrassing. It really is. You don't want to have to do that all the time. I feel like a complete dick. And you can't, even if you try and cover yourself and say, "I'm not talking to the wall, I'm talking to the dead," people look at you even stranger. And you think, well, just... Anyway, I just walked very fast and got out of the way. And what ended up happening with this haunting was this woman approached me again, but she approached me in a more respectful way. So I said to her, "What do you want?" And she kept moaning about being sick, and I'm sick and I need help. And I'm sort of, what the fuck? Because I wasn't in the mood. I was in a shit mood after that, because I hate it when that happens. And I just sort of suddenly realised that this was a girl, probably about 17. She had dark hair, probably from about 1800s, and she was unaware she was dead. I thought, not another one. There's a lot of them in London, a lot of people that don't realise they're dead. So I just sort of told her, I said, "No, I'm sorry, you're dead. You've passed on, you're no longer sick. Sick is irrelevant, you are dead. You need to move into the dead world." And kept walking, because I thought, well, you know, hopefully that's done it. I normally take a little bit more care, but I just wasn't in the mood for it. And then she approached me again, and I got the whole thing about, you know, sick and help me, and I just had to get really firm with her, and I just had to like really ram it home. As I was talking to her, I realised that she had another younger child behind her. I was probably about 5. And they did eventually leave. I became aware of an older woman that was sort of looking out for this. I think quite possibly their mother, I don't know. But they did end up leaving. They did end up crossing over, and I got to sort of, do what I was actually intending to do in the first place instead of yelling at walls. But that was the reason that I developed the Dead book. And what I do now, I call these sort of hauntings the minor hauntings, because I don't really need to mostly, like the Charing Cross one I spoke about before, I didn't do anything about it. I just left it there. I thought, I'm not going to bother. I did help these young girls out. Okay, that's fine. I don't mind doing that. But I now have a system that if the dead want to contact me and they're, just sort of having trouble crossing over, they're sort of what I call minor. They're not anything I need to call in sort of extra help over, things like that. I basically read the Riot Act. I say, I've acknowledged you. I'm not dealing with it now. When I come back with the book, we will have a discussion and I'll help you out. Until then, you're not to follow me home. You're not to annoy me. If you annoy me again, I won't do it. And basically, it stopped them. Because I think when you really start getting into a place like London, and there's so much of it here, you really have to get very bossy. You have to get very commanding. Otherwise, they'll just take over. And they honestly do. They just, the mix is too much. I want life to be my biggest concern, not the dead world with, my life sort of shrinking because I'm being pushed into this. I mean, I don't mind doing it like this. It's interesting. I don't mind the sort of, forced medium work that I do now, but you've got to get a balance in there. Anyway, so that's what I do now when I'll go to a pub or a cafe or a park or something like that, and I'll open myself up to all the ones. I'll wait till I've usually got about 3 or 4, and then I'll just spend an hour. I don't do it inside my house. I always go outside the house to do it. Generally sort of around the area where most of them have been sort of happening. But, as I said in a lot of the other reading of the other clips that I've done, there's no time in the dead world. There's no geography. So once I've connected, it's quite easy. And in the book, I call it my Ouija without the Ouija board, because I write a question, and I'm pretty good at automatic writing, so I let them answer it. And it works out quite nicely. It's also that I've got copies of what went down, and that's kind of nice too. So anyway, let's go on to the next clip. Okay, Waterloo Station, Waterloo Concourse. This was one that didn't embarrass me because it was 8 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't had any coffee. I was half asleep. I was on my way to the office, and I couldn't believe it. I came out like I'd been on a tube. I'd been on the Northern Line. Anyone that knows the Northern Line on the tube in London, it is evil, and it was like sardines in a can. I had people's underarms near my nose, and it was revolting. Sweaty, sneezing, snotty people. It was horrible. This packed train and packed concourse, and I was not happy, and I was just on my way to get coffee, and I looked down and I can't believe what is in front of me. And I could, sometimes I get the apparitions almost, this was nearly a full apparition. I knew he was dead because he wasn't completely, like, it didn't look that solid, but sometimes I actually do see them, and I could see this old guy, and he was laying in the concourse, and as I went up, he said to me, "I don't feel well," and tried to, like, I could see him try and move, and I said, "You're fucking dead, that's why," and just walked off. And I was so fed up by this stage, because if I saw another one, and I thought, right, that's it, coffee, office, that's it. But that's the type of thing that'll happen. There was also, I had one that did it to me on a travelator. I couldn't believe it. I'm on a travelator, and as I'm looking, I'm thinking, is there someone laying down over there? And it was another dead person, but I just walked over. I don't care anymore. I've had enough. They can get themselves out of it. Anyway, let's see what happens when I get to the office, which is the next clip. This is where I used to work. It's called Wellington House. That's just the facade. The sort of office areas in the back are all modern. They pulled the back of it down and built this modern sort of office. It was a really nice office, actually. But it used to be a big department store. Now, because I'm not English, can't remember. I tried to look it up, but I can't find what it was. It was one that I think was around in the 70s up until about the 80s. And they ended up going broke because of inheritance tax, which was really sad. And all of the stores apparently closed down. But that used to be the headquarters. So I started in this office and everything was fine. It was just normal until one day, I mean, it is connected to another haunting, and I'm not going to go into that because it just gets too complex. I did something inadvertently to piss this ghost off. Now, up until then, I hadn't even heard of it. I hadn't even realised that there was any entities there. Oh, it was just, look, sometimes, and this is so typical of London, sometimes they just put you into the most ridiculous situations. She was really angry with me, this woman, really angry with me. I'm used to the dead, as you can probably see by now. Not frightened of them. I'm never really frightened of them. She managed to frighten the crap out of me. She was this woman, I know that she was connected to the department store. She was married to one of the sons that owned it, and she's still there. But I can describe her. She had sort of mid-brown hair. It was always very neat. She was always very neat. And she used to wear these 70s, I think they were, two-piece suits. They were like tweed, but it was sort of all, I don't know how to describe it. They were very textured. It had a sort of texture to it. And there was sort of the jacket and then the skirt. But very, very severe woman. Talk about bossy. She was almost, well, she scared me, and I've had to come up against things that have attacked me. Horrible black things, I don't even know what they are, in bad hauntings, and she scared the shit out of me. She had such a presence that it was just so demanding, and she was really angry with me. I was sitting in an office, and I had all this work to do, so I was concentrating. Now, I still don't know if she actually played with the door or the door opened or what was going on. I really don't know because I wasn't looking. But I heard the door handle go on the office. And it could have been someone like outside checking if I was in there. And maybe I didn't hear the knock. I don't know. But I heard the door handle sort of flick up like someone had opened the door. And I looked over and there was no one there. So I just went back to what I was doing. And all of a sudden, as I said, I contact the dead in different ways. She was one that put an impression in my mind. And it was so strong and so powerful and so, you are in trouble, really severe, that it actually made me gasp and jump in my seat. And that's why I think the door handle was done by her, because she was right behind the door when she did that. Now, I didn't understand what was going on still. I think a day or two later, I'm talking to my boss at my desk. I'm having a conversation. And all I could feel was this woman pacing like a maniac behind me, going up and down with this absolute fury. Anyway, I think she's still there. I did nothing, and I ended up leaving the job not that long later. It was a temp job, and I ended up leaving a short time later anyway. And I sorted the problem out. She was so angry with, and she just sort of melted back into the background, and I never saw her again. But I guess that's what kind of happens in London, and that's sort of a bit of an explanation why I was nearly driven up the wall by them all. But certainly, sort of getting it in a system, and I think this is the thing, if you start working with the dead, in any form, you're going to get these sort of surges where all of a sudden your abilities, because I think with London, it wasn't just the fact that there were so many dead. The dead were pushing my actual medium abilities to expand, and it's a bit of a co-effort whether you want it or not. It would be interesting to see, especially if I go back to Australia, either for a visit or to live, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see the effect I had on it. I've got a theory that no matter where I go, I'm probably going to be like this anyway, because I just don't think once you've got these abilities, they can go backwards. I mean, maybe they can, but I've never had that with any spirituality. It's always sort of got bigger and bigger and bigger. Anyway, I just thought that might be interesting. People might be interested to see what it's like when, you know, the dead world just start invading your life. But as I said, the Dead World book has worked really well. I'm now no longer bothered, and if I am, it's sort of only quick, and then I make sure that I go back and I do help them. You know, I keep my sort of end of the bargain, they keep theirs, and you know, I'm just teaching them to be British again. You know, the beauty of queuing people. Queue. You're not going to get it unless you queue. Anyway, I thought you might be interested. Thank you again for listening. I hope you enjoyed the clip. There will be more of these coming, and I'll see you in another one, hopefully. Bye.